Well, appreciate you both being here. Apologies for running behind. Um, I was saying that I hadn't chatted with both of you in a long time, but really, good to see you here. So, what's life been like in the past year and a half? We're talking about founders' responsibility, mental responsibility to the team. So, what's life been like for both of you? Like last year and a half during the pandemic and the rise of racial injustice, and just trying to see like what's your journey's been like.
Yeah, I'll pass it to Harold first.
Yeah, I'll jump in, and hopefully I'm not delayed here. I think my computer's doing its best to keep up, but this year's been wild. I'm a dad. He'll be a five next month, so 5-year-old son here. And so when everything shut down with the pandemic last March, my wife and I just decided to take him out of school. And so we said, well, we'll just keep you at school, keep you at home. She would work with him during the day, and I'd work with him during the afternoon, or she'd have in the morning, I'd have in the afternoon, so that we could each try and find some time to work. And it was just really tough. Of course, we had to deal with the challenges that were going on with racial injustices and Black men, being slain and all the different challenges happening, especially with the inequities in the business world. And so as a leader of a team, you try and not only think through the economics of like running a business that's being impacted by COVID-19, but also being able to deal with the issues of like, how do you make sure that your team is healthy mentally, emotionally? And so those are two things that we talked about a lot, is like mental health and emotional health at our team level.
Yeah, I definitely remember the early onset with having a kid as well, and that was definitely like that was the first time me and my wife joined schedules. So now it's officially that we got the same schedule, so we know where everybody's at, because it would be impossible otherwise. So that was a major undertaking. And then as we were running our business, we had the luck of having COVID tailwinds, in the sense that we have been trying to convince people for years that you don't need a focus group to do what we do. And now you can't do a focus group. So now you must try a pilot league. And so that really kind of changed our trajectory. And and from a team standpoint, we had to start hiring, because we were bringing in so much business, but we couldn't go out to see people. So in fact, we had one person join like literally like a few days before the shutdown. So like we had to work all that out. Now we had already been remote, so we already had a little bit of those dynamics down, but just like the home base idea of things, to make sure everybody's all on the same page, has been a challenge. And then, it probably wasn't until, with everything going on, like the George Floyd thing and all that, it probably wasn't until midway through the year that I started trying to check in with people to make sure like they're all good. Cause like my CTO was feeling super isolated. So I was like, well, let's go do something. Like, let's get you in a remote office or something like that, just finding ways to help people. Like one of my senior developers went to Costa Rica for like a month, and he's still only 2 hours ahead. So I was like, go do that. Like, enjoy, get some fresh air, get some good weather. Imagine some of the people who work remote are in the Midwest and the East Coast. So not only are you in a pandemic, but you can't go outside every day easily. So like, how do you get them out of that? So that's kind of where we're at. I started trying to get people we have resources, so it's nothing to pay for $500 flight for you to be comfortable. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally, totally. Yeah, thank you both for sharing, and I'm curious, if you're open to talk about it, like how did you see yourself changing or adjusting your own mental health or wellness practice over like last year to like where you feel like okay, maybe not you got it all the time, but like you're good.
Yeah, I don't know. I put some pretty heavy work in myself, because I think one piece of it was marriage, right? Once you have a kid, you have the relationship, then you have the company, and you have the kid, and like really quickly, one of those things can fall to the wayside, right? And so I had to like figure out priorities and then the organization of things, but then just giving myself some space, because it takes up a lot of time, all three things, and I need some space. So a long time ago, back when I started UB a long time ago, every morning I wake up and work out. I started that like 10 years ago. So I've kept that going. But what I added to it was like working out my mind. I didn't have much respect for that. I don't know what's respect for it. I was like, no, I'm good. Like I feel good. right? But in reality, like, there's just certain things going on in your head that you might not even be realizing that are driving your energy in the room, or how you converse with people, or how you receive information. And so I started basically trying to do meditation every morning. And I got some of it from my creative friends. So my friends who are actors and stuff like that. Like every person who I've seen be successful in that space has created a ritual for themselves around like meditation and like creative mind space. From Lawrence Fishburne down to like, my boy Neil, who you guys have probably seen but don't know yet. You know what I mean? That's how they made it. They like create these visualizations and they open their mind up, because those people get as many no's or more no's than we get on a regular basis. And the only way they can continue to be creative and feel good about what they're doing is to like clear space every day. So I started adapting that, and that's been like super helpful just in my interactions in the world and in how I can maintain as a person.
Awesome, thanks. You just name dropping your friends there.
Right, Lawrence Fishburne.
I don't know if
he's a friend, but he showed up to my family event talking about he's a distant cousin. So I'm like, all right, I'm taking it.
Yeah, I mean, for us, I mean, the thing that I looked at was really, as James talked about, is creating space, but really finding a routine. One of the things I looked at was like I like to box, and I wanted to find ways to like really tune in, not only as a de-stressor, but also as fitness, but also as like my time. So when I think about all that I give, I'm the type of person that like when I feel low, I try and give to other people and pour into other people. Like some folks who know me well know I had to deal with some like family health issues earlier this year at the exact same time. Austin was going through the snowstorm of a century, where thousands of people all across our city had lost water and power. And so we were working to try and help them really get back on their feet and be able to really survive it. And so, while in the midst of the stuff I was dealing with personally, I found the strength to go help other people, because that's what fills me up. And so being able to like understand like from a circumstance issue, I don't know where the quote comes from, but y'all probably heard it where someone says, if everyone in the world got together and threw all of their problems up in the air, and they landed on the ground, you wouldn't be able to pick your problem up fast enough, because someone else would have already picked it up as a preferred problem. They would have rather have what you're dealing with than what they're dealing with. And so having that mindset has always really helped me keep things in perspective, is no matter how hard things are, and things can be hard and things can be difficult. Like I don't want to like dismiss that, but also acknowledging like where we stand in a privileged standpoint and how things are good, despite when things aren't feeling great.
Yeah, that's real. Thanks for sharing. I'm curious, how transparent are you with your team around like your own mental health dilemmas? There's something I was experienced earlier this year. I've been thinking about as well, is like the tech industry has been so transactional and just be about growth and product and raising money and getting things done. And I feel like it was removing the human from the equation. Right, from like we all humans all deal with stuff. So I'm curious, like, how do you communicate with your teams around like, hey, I need a day, or I'm not feeling well, or I'm in therapy, things of that nature, or not?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I tend to book out time. I actually was talking to one of our new hires yesterday, and she said, "Man, your schedule is packed. How do you get anything done?" And I said, "Oh, no, those are slots for me to work." And like I literally will work on this assignment, like we were working on our 409A, or go work out in the middle of the day, or go get a massage, or meditation, any of those things. I'll block that time off myself, and I'm very clear with the team. And like we have a team member where I had to encourage them, like, hey, you need to take a week off to reset, because you're falling in some areas that you're normally strong in. I'm recognizing that. Having worked in corporate America for a decade, I know that a manager that I had in the past would have probably just written me up or something saying like, hey, your performance is off. And so having the, insight to understand like, well, people are dealing with a lot right now. We need to show more grace. This was an opportunity for us to be able to say, hey, you should probably take some time off to just take a break, so that when you come back in, you're back on all cylinders. And I try to make sure I do the same thing. We actually are expecting another child next month, and I had to create our parental leave policy. And so it's pretty aggressive relative to our stage of funding and the space. And so as the first person in the company that's having a kid, I knew that it wouldn't look great if I didn't do the policy myself. So that's me taking 6 weeks off and trusting the team and to know that they're going to be able to execute without me. And so that's something I'll be doing starting on this Friday, and super excited to see how each of them grows without me necessarily sitting there in most of those meetings or running point on most of those projects.
Actually can piggyback on that. Part of the growth of my company is because I did what Harold's about to do. Because we oftentimes don't have the amount of capital we need to in order to sit around and whiteboard, which I now have a whiteboard, you don't clear the mental space to like actually think about what's going to happen next. You're really just operating on like a 1 month ahead schedule, which can get you to a certain space, but can't get you to like, can't get you to the clouds. So like having that mental space is super important. And so after I saw what that 8 weeks did for me, then I was like, oh, I have to do that every now and then. So every couple of months, I might like block a whole day, and that's just music production day for me or whatever it is. Like I'm gonna go to the studio, I'm gonna go on the beach, I'm gonna do something all day uninterrupted that just gives me free time. And I kind of encourage other people to do that as well. And again, we've been remote for a while, so like if you feel like going to work somewhere and experience something like I'm open to that as well. So for me, as far as my mental health goes, I still have work to do on myself, so much doesn't affect me, as Wayne might know. So like, I don't have much exposed, but I will say that when I go through like certain experience, but I don't let that make me believe that other people aren't going through things, right? So when other things happen in the world, they do have effect on other people on the team, then I want people to have that open discussion. So they know that like they know where their team members are at mentally and can give some people a little bit of a break and whatnot. So I try and when things happen in the world, like even if I forget to say them, my team's tight enough that they're gonna be like, well, wait, don't you remember like this person lives here and this time and this thing happened, like let's check in, right? And then we'll all check in and make sure everything's cool. So I think becomes a collaborative thing, but creating an environment where people feel comfortable, like being collaborative in that manner, where I might not be addressing in a team meeting, but someone else is like, hey, let's address this as well because it might be affecting that person.
Awesome. Thank.
James, you coming at us from the Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta? The music production?
I don't know. We'll see.
He didn't say no. He just said we'll see. Yeah. You okay? Stay for like a couple more minutes. I know a little bit.
Yeah.
Awesome. And Harold, congrats on the second child and trusting your team with the policies. So yeah, good stuff.
Thank you.
Ask another question, and then I want to also ask the question from the chat from Digital Humanian. But James, I think you suggested this question, and it's around like hearing no, right? And James, you alluded this earlier as well. It's like, you both Black founders, Black men. We know the data. If you don't know, people can look it up around like lack of funding going to African American founders. Even though it has gotten better over years, it's still hard. How do you deal with being told no often and keep having the energy to like push forward?
Yeah.
I'll let James go first on that.
Yeah. I'm the most underfunded man you ever met. No. I mean, I think when you're out here in Silicon Valley, like there's a lot of noise going on, as you may know, and you're constantly around the anomalies of the world, right? And so when you're in like the circumference of that, it can be kind of disorienting in a way, right? Because you're building something, you're pouring your heart into something, you're seeing progress, but you're not able to get to the capital that you see other people getting. And so that can be a little bit frustrating. So the early no's when you're not on your mental health game can be frustrating. And then frustrations, along with being a Black person walking through the world where you're receiving negative inputs here and there anyways, mount up to just negative energy in general, right? So you might be having a conversation and not thinking anything negative about it, but you're kind of offloading this negativity that's sitting on you, whether you know it or not, kind of subconsciously. And it comes across in conversation and it leads to people not like, converting essentially. as investors. But then once you kind of get further along with a real business, I think the dynamics really change because now having been an investor, having done transparent collective, helping founders, helping them raise money, really knowing what's going on, and then continuing to have an issue against that, it becomes a deeper emotional situation where you're like, dang, is that something I'm even supposed to do? Right? Because it doesn't seem to want to come to me. So maybe that's not for me. Right. And so you start to go through like these really like highs and lows where even when people are giving you a commitment and then they're like, well, you know what? I changed my mind. Right. I'm gonna take that. Right. And it's like you get all these plans in your head about how you're gonna go do a bunch of stuff. And now you're like, well, back to square one. Right. So I think I've now learned after my most recent like emotional low with this stuff that I have to go back to what Harold was saying around having appreciation around how privileged I am to have a company that provides for 13 people and their families and is growing and has no problems growing without the capital, right? And so like kind of rooting yourself in that and not rooting myself in the it's not working unless you're able to raise money idea. You know what I'm saying? Because there's always conversations around ownership of company and all that stuff and how, well, they've been a $1 billion company, they own 10%, blah, 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 blah. Like, it's always an excuse why it's cool to have no funding, right? Like, but in the end, if you root yourself in the fact that you built something that's great and you really love it and you enjoy what you do every day, then you can kind of come home to that as opposed to disappointment in which you weren't able to get. Why not have the appreciation of what you have done? You know what I'm saying? And so I think with that in mind, like I feel like I'm in a better place.
Yeah, I mean, I'll add to that just really briefly. When it comes to funding, and it's one of these things that it becomes a topic that we always talk about because it's a lack of a resource, right? Like if there was a shortage of water that is affecting plants, you won't think of all the other issues that plants are dealing with. You're going to talk about the water, right? And so what I try and think about is like, okay, it's difficult for Black founders to raise money, full stop. It's difficult for women to raise money, full stop. People of color, all these different groups. I get it. I could go work at P&G. I could go work at Deloitte, but I want to do this. And so I think that oftentimes we get so caught up in like, man, this sucks. This is so difficult. It's like, you don't have to do this. Like, you can go work for another company. You can go become employee number 2, employee number 20, or employee number 200. And so I think that there's been this like over glamorization of what startup is. Like, I know I went 2.5 years unpaid, like just literally bootstrapping and not taking a salary. And when we were able to pay people, I finally got on payroll at, I think, $23,000 was the first amount I made. And that was in 2018. So like really being able to think through like why you're doing it is really important, because on days that the money's not there, or the customers aren't there, or the product's not there, it's going to be important to make sure you got a North Star that goes beyond a TechCrunch hit or a fundraising announcement. And so for me, starting knowing like, okay, we're building this thing for this reason, that really helps me continue to go forward when it feels kind of heavy on that funding process. But understanding that if it was easy and everyone thought it was obvious, a lot of people would probably already be building it. And so expecting no's is really important in the journey, because you do have to it's a numbers game. You've got to talk to your people. And so the last thing I'll say on that is I tell founders to spend more time doing research to find their people and pitch them than they do trying to convince people.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm not trying to change your mind. I want to get you to a position on this one way or the other quickly. And if that position is not for you, great, fine. But if it is for you, like, let's talk about what it could look like. And so I think that has helped me. That mindset has helped me like navigate some of the ups and downs on the financial and funding side.
Yeah, I think that last part's super important. That mental state, because Black people are always in this position, right? You always feel like you're begging people for something. If you have the control over the situation, not to be begging people for something, and to just be like, are you down or not? It just changes how you walk away from it. It really does.
Yeah, change the complete power dynamic.
Yeah.
No, appreciate you sharing that. I'm gonna see this question for you two, and I'm gonna work on answering the question from the chat. But I want you to think about this question in terms of what advice life lessons that you've heard from your mentor and coaches that help you along your journey that you're like, you know what, I keep that one in my back of my head when things get tough or difficult. Um, so when you think about that, in terms of digital humanitarian, your question, I want to jump in that right quick around where you draw the line in doing good. Um, I I go back to what one of my mentors told me early on when I was not well mentally, and he was realizing that, but I was trying to help other people, and his advice was like, put your oxygen mask on first. So if you ever get to a space to where you feel like your energy is being drained too much, or you're not being able to mentally take care of yourself, then I would pause on trying to help or do good. When you feel like you are not in a space where you can refill your own cup yourself, or not be able to go to someone else to refill your own cup. So I hope that helps. But
Mm-hmm.
James and Harold, so what lessons have you heard, from your coaches or mentors or advisors or friends that really stuck with you in terms of help you keep moving forward?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's two things, and I'll start with the last point you were saying about like even service and giving of folks. I learned early on about this idea that service is the price you pay for the time you spend on this earth. Helping others is truly a reward, and being able to give of yourself to help other people is really valuable, and that's something I've always really run with. We talked a little bit about the whole like, how do you assess the problems and challenges you have relative to other people, and everything's circumstantial. So I won't go back into that. But the thing I talk about with my peer mentors, and I don't think I have like a personal advisor or a personal mentor, but I have a group of peer mentors, people who are in the trenches getting it, that I can call at 1 a.m. or we can talk about whatever challenges I can cry with. I can ask for help. One of the things we talk about a lot, and it was really a breakthrough moment for me back, I think it was in Durham, in 2018, I was speaking at a Google event there, and I realized I had put so much weight on me to like be successful with this venture. It's like, well, if bandwagon doesn't blow, like I'm a failure, this, that, and the other. And the thing that I realized while mentoring these founders who were, steps behind me was that this is a relay race. And the moment you realize that this is a relay race and that your journey is only to put that next person in a better position, it took so much pressure off me. Because I don't have to make it across the starting line. I just put that person who I'm going to hand the baton to in a better position. So what does that look like in application or in practice? Well, that means that if I'm having investor relationships, that I'm a decent person, that I'm communicating with them effectively, so that when the next Black founder shows up, they get a square deal. Or when I have my opportunities to hire someone and they come to work for me, they feel like, oh man, this is a great experience. And when they go and work for James, they be like, oh man, I had a great time working at Harold. I'd love to work for a company that's led by a person like this or a team like this, right? And so understanding like the macro effects of our individual actions was really something that helped me like take some pressure off of like, oh, I don't have to win this race. I don't have to be successful. I just need to make sure that I'm giving of myself to put people in a position so that as a culture and as a group, we are all benefiting, whatever that looks like. And so that has helped me in my circle really be able to navigate not only the ups and downs, but really being optimistic about how exciting the future is with so many creators right now getting involved in what we're building.
Yeah. From my standpoint, I guess same thing for Harold. I talk to Harold pretty frequently. Another set of founders, just like anything that goes on, just to get feedback or thoughts or whatever. And so like, I don't know, the one thing that definitely stood out to me when I first did my like first tech company, like, really UV, was like once I got into that flow, my expectations of other people were skewed. Because if I brought you in to do something, I anticipated that if another task came up that might not be on the job description, you could also handle that because there's only a handful of us. But you come to realize, like, when my advisors told me, it's like, well, if these people could do everything that you could do, they would also be the CEO, right? So like, you can't think that everybody can do what you can do. Because in my mind, I'm thinking like, well, who am I? If I spend time on it, I can learn it. And that's different than other people learn differently, apply themselves differently, and their motivation cycle is different as well, right? So for me, lack of resources and time leads to massive output. For other people, it can be a detriment. It can be like a downward spiral. So like, you know, I kind of work with a couple of my advisors to understand like different need states of people and how they get motivation. And then for me, at least understanding that I hire people for what they were hired for. Can't make everybody into a Swiss Army knife. So I think like that was a key finding for me. Like if you're the CEO, you can go ahead and assume you probably have a unique skill set. And so don't try and apply your own worldview or motivation type to other people that you bring into the room.
Awesome. No, that's both great, and awesome advice. And something I forget, both of you, but something I forget over the years and about, you know, my journey and experience working with people and trying to do the work as well. So thank you both for sharing. But I really appreciate you both for joining today, and I apologize for not reaching out and connecting more often. Outside, say, hey, can you speak? But I see you both on social, and I'm proud of you both, and thanks for taking the time today, and I appreciate it.
Thanks, man. Appreciate you.
That's good, man. Absolutely.
All right, take care.
All right, see ya.